I took a chance on this game, and I'm so glad that I did. I was at a local game shop a while ago and I saw Estate Raise the Realm on the shelf. I'd seen a video on YouTube about it, and it seemed like it had some similarities to games I already played and enjoy. I took a chance and bought the game, which I usually don't do before at least trying it if I can. And after a few plays, I'm happy to say that I recommend this game. My review will go into how this game works, some game comparisons, peer review, and then my final thoughts. Estate is a game where you, as a noble, lead your house to rebuild your realm after the Great War. It is a medieval inspired setting that you manage a hand of cards with, you have a tableau that you work with as well, and it utilizes worker placement to have ultimately the most victory points, hopefully, at the end of 5 eras. First, this game features a large deck of cards, 156 in fact, with most cards featuring unique abilities. Some cards interact with each other, like the farmer and farm, or feature some set collection like the monks. Other cards have one time abilities that give you resources, or allow you to store or tuck cards underneath them for extra points. Some give endgame or ongoing abilities. Like a lot of common games with card powers, this deck has a plethora of options for combinations and pathways to take during the game. You only have four actions in the game, four types of actions, which essentially boils down to playing cards by paying resources, drawing cards, activating cards in your tableau, and then the gathering action, which features that worker placement mentioned before. It works on a shared board. Otherwise, the other actions are used on your own personal board. One interesting feature is that you play cards to your tableau. As you play them, you increase your power to do your certain types of actions depending on the type of card that is played. And in particular, the gather action, as you grow more powerful with this, unlocks more powerful actions that you can take during this step. And the gathering actions that are set up at the beginning of the game are modular and therefore gives some variability and alters the way that you think about taking this action and how you approach the game. Each player has an asymmetric player board with a character that has an ability you can use during the game, as well as setup abilities with your tableau. Many of them giving you a head start by being able to play a card for free and activating that card to give you a head start in some of the action tracks to make them powerful. Finally, as with many other games, you have public era objectives and personal family objectives to pursue for points. The public area objectives are competitive, so whoever does the best gets more points, and other bonuses are handed out to second and so forth. Here, I'll also mention the solo mode, which alters how these objectives are pursued. You have very specific solo era cards that are flipped each turn. They give you some sort of benefit that you choose one of, and by the end of the game, you have to fulfill the requirements set forth by at least three of those five era cards. So, in addition to trying to plan your turns to meet these objectives, at least three of them, if you do, then you score the game for all the points that you've gathered. And there are certain point thresholds set forth in the rulebook to determine how well you've played the game. By explaining some of these mechanisms, it may not be surprising to already have compared this game to at least two very popular games, Wingspan and Everdell. With four main actions to take, tableau building with a large deck of cards, and round bonus objectives, personal objectives, and card activation, it's easy to see the similarities with Wingspan. And you also take the worker placement aspect from Everdell, and you essentially get a state. Even down to the fact that in Everdell, you have multiple copies of certain types of cards, and they often combo together if you happen to draw into them. And that is present in Estate as well. I would say the overall complexity of rules and how the cards work are very similar to these two games as well, with perhaps a little bit more complexity added to Estate, maybe a similar weight taking into account both Wingspan and Everdell and their respective expansions mixed in. One small feature that I really appreciated about this game, which is comparative to Agricola and some other card based games, is that in the multiplayer game in particular, you draw cards at the beginning of the game and pass them along in a drafting format before you start playing. It makes sense to me to have that feature in a game like this, where sometimes you need to collect certain combinations of cards to make them work, and therefore this draft increases your chances of having a good start. This is present in the most popular variant of Agricola in some form or fashion, having a draft, which is so prevalent, like it feels like it's another game that sets you up for the regular game, which I find tremendously fun. In addition, with the four resources in a state at the end of every era, you place an additional resource in their respective worker placement spots over the gathering board, accumulating them if they aren't taken during the round. Exactly how it's done in Agricola and other Rosenberg games. The only thing a state is missing, of course, is the breeding of animals. The peer review on Board Game Geek has both positive and negative things to say about this game. To start with the positive, a lot of people enjoyed the streamlined gameplay that felt very familiar, especially with the mechanisms comparable to popular games mentioned above. This was also a sort of drawback, as people mentioned that if they enjoy Agricola, Wingspan, and Everdell, which have more content and history compared to this game, why would they ever bring Estate to the table? Of course, if you prefer this type of medieval esque theme and the gameplay is somewhat familiar, you could choose to play this game over the others, and so it really could just depend on what kind of setting you'd like to play with. Some minor quibbles were made about the rulebook, which is quite short but a little disorganized, as well as some component issues with two player colors being too similar in color. However, my rating overall for this game is quite high, an 8.9, which kind of surprised me. I'm already a fan of the conglomeration of mechanisms that are presented here, so learning the game was relatively easier for me. I find the collection of cards interesting strategically and enjoy the puzzle of creating a tableau, starting with not a lot of resources or workers and slowly progressing into having more of an abundance by the end of the game. The card the cards can really make each game feel different for me, more so than what player power I'm using, and so the variability of this game hits just right for me in that aspect. I particularly love the notion of having to acquire more workers throughout the game and not just be given them at certain points of the game for free, as it creates additional tough decisions as to how to allocate your resources, which once again are pretty tight at the beginning, whether to play cards with them or to invest in more workers to have more actions throughout the game. The solo mode is pretty easy to do, it's easy to run, but it still creates a fun puzzle to solve each time that is slightly different, but still pretty challenging. I do agree with the fact that the rulebook was a little rough to learn from, and so it does help to understand these mechanisms from other games to approach this game and understand its puzzle. As for me, I may fall in the camp that I prefer this theme over the one in Everdell, and find the mechanisms in Estate to be more intriguing and strategic compared to that game, mostly just comparing to the base game of Everdell, of course. I haven't experienced what Everdell has grown into in recent years, and so I can't really comment on that. But I can talk about my expansion experience with Wingspan and the other span type board games. As a whole, it's hard to compete with the elegance and the opportunities and the originality that Wingspan has now that has it has given compared to this brand new game, which feels like sort of inspired or perhaps even copied. But I do appreciate the solo mode in Estate a little bit more than Wingspan. It's more reminiscent of the types of solo experiences I prefer, like with Rosenberg games, where you're essentially just playing the same game but trying to beat your own score rather than run an automa. Plus, the dashes of Rosenberg esque mechanisms in Estate, like with the draft, the accumulation of resources, etc., just adds a few more points to its favor and my overall enjoyment of the game. I really like both games equally, though, but would probably stick to teaching Wingspan to newer folks in board gaming. I think there might be a little bit too much going on. And once again, from the perspective that I have, like, say, taking this to work and playing it with folks who do not play games at all, I think it would be a little bit easier to have them wrap their head around Wingspan rather than Estate. But you never know. I think Estate could potentially be taught and understood by those who aren't as experienced, but who's to say? To conclude, I'm really impressed with this game. I know that other people might prefer other the games that were mentioned before, Everdell, Wingspan. They have, once again, more originality in their mechanisms. The theme might be more appealing, and they have more history of content. But I'm super excited to come back to this particular puzzle of Estate learn more about some of these cards, I really enjoyed not only having, some of the cards that comboed with each other, trying to search for them through the deck, or if they happen to be in my hand or in the market, it was fun to try to consider that combo with the other choices of cards that I had in play. But also there I noticed that there were cards that I had only seen for the first time, or there were only one of in the deck. And so it's really cool to see some of those unique cards come out once in a while and really challenge your perspective of what is good in the game. And so, yeah, I really liked Estate. I would play this again, and I highly recommend it if you do enjoy these mechanisms but aren't completely, married to the theme and the content of Wingspan and Everdell or even Agricola. Like, I would give Estate a try if you do find it. I will mention too that it is available on screentop.gg. It is a Tabletopia-esque website that I just found out. There are other games there that are publicly published. A lot of them are self-published games. I'm hoping to try out a few of them as well. But if this modality interests you in trying this game out, then that is there for you to research and use. But otherwise, once again, I really like this game. 8.9 out of 10. Highly recommend it. So those are my thoughts on Estate. Let me know what you think if you've played it or if you're interested in trying this game out. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.